What in the hell happened in day one of Worlds? Honestly, this is some crazy development that nobody could have ever predicted. Obviously, yesterday, most people, including myself, were unhappy to see 69% of the standard deck list being Esper Rafine. 22 out of 32 players picking that deck for standard. And somehow, the three people at the top of standings after draft and standard. So standard was a total of 5 rounds, and we have three non-espers at the top. It's insane. It's hype. I'm so happy to see it. These three players are just incredible. They're geniuses. I mean, but especially Julian Wellman and Jean-Emmanuel Depraz. I mean, they are these two players bringing Haughty Djinn decks. So Julian with the Izzet deck that we'll look at in a second, and Jean-Emmanuel with the just straight mono blue tempo, or mono blue Haughty Djinn plus the serpents or whatever. Um, Nathan Stoyer with Grixis midrange, also like very underrepresented, but actually has a decent matchup at Esper. It seems. I'm not surprised too. Like that definitely felt like it would be a decent matchup for him with the vampires and stuff. But yeah, I'm so relieved and happy to see like quote unquote off meta decks, like two of these being off meta decks. I mean, Grixis is kind of meta, and them just going. They both went 4-1. So actually, I think every player here went 4-1 standard, but they kind of like gave themselves a loss, which is funny. Like Julian at some point was like no losses, and Nathan was no losses, and they had to face each other in Swiss. So Nathan took a loss, and then eventually, I don't know if Julian played against Depraz. I think he did, and I think he won. Did he win? I can't remember. I can't. But something happened. Gia also lost to Nathan Stoyer. So actually, no, he didn't. They didn't face off. I don't think Jean-Emmanuel and Julian faced off because Gia started 2-1. So his only loss was to Nathan Stoyer at some point. So they're all 4-1. None of them are playing Esper. Fantastic. Hype. Let's take a look at the deck list. Hey, krowz from the future here. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more from me, go ahead and click that subscribe button. It's free. And if you want to watch me live, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. Let's get into the rest. So here we are, starting things off with Julian Wellman's Izzet deck. And oh boy, this is definitely a deck. Let me reorganize things a little bit. This is the craziest shit that anybody like nobody saw this one coming. This deck is so wild in the cards that it's playing. Nobody could have expected this. Nobody. Julian Wellman's a genius. I mean, truly genius because mono blue lacking interaction, and also you get access to Fable, which can make treasures, and then you get Kiki that can combo with the Djinn later for like massive burst damage. Invoke the Wind's main deck, which is incredible and probably served them quite well. I don't think we got to see it too much, but not that many players have ways to counteract this. Like, not many players are playing bounce spells, and counter spells are pretty limited in the main deck, so you can steal like a Shield Rider and an Owl with this against Esper, and you're good to go. This card has carried him one game as well, like Cemetery Illuminator exiling the graveyard in blue, like what the hell? And its card advantage. This card is every card in this deck did its job. Maybe Strangle was like a little less good, but still incredible. And also playing Shore Up instead of the phase out spell, I think is genius as well because it's way more aggressive. You don't have to like, you get your damage in, or you can block. Like it's incredible. The whole deck just makes so much sense. Just it's just so good. Like you have the card advantage. I mean, this is more like card selection, right? You're looking for specific cards, so you never run out of. For the most part, you never run out of spells to cast. You even have Fable to like ditch the lands if you're drawing some, or ditch some spells into the graveyard to like boost your Djinn up if they're useless. Like good 6 amount of counter spells, like totally reasonable. 2 protection spells, maybe a little low, I would say, but still he's been drawing them consistently. And then the one Lear that has been so good. It has been so good. I don't know about the main deck, but it's been so good in post board games. And I guess we can talk a little bit about why this deck and Gio's deck, which we'll take a look at in a second. I guess I can show it off real quick, and then we will talk about why these decks are doing so well. So here's Gio's deck, Jean-Emmanuel. Just a pretty good, solid mono blue deck. Good counter spells, decent amount of interaction, decent amount of protection, like good everything basically. And then Forest and Scatter main deck, like kind of genius, honestly. So both of these decks are doing so well because none of the Esper players are respecting graveyard decks. None of them. None of them are. Nobody has Hearses in the sideboard. Nobody has Underdog. Like, they're struggling so much. See, even Gio, he's like prepped. He's ready for Hearse. But on the other side of things, Julian is not really. Well, actually, he has a braid. It's funny because they were ready for it, but it makes their job so much easier that nobody was respecting it. Nobody. It just gives them such a huge edge on the field because without Hearse, without things to interact with the graveyard, these cards are so crazy. They have like they're unchecked. Like they just deal. This thing can deal like 12 damage, 10 damage. Like swings twice, you're dead. This thing comes out for 2 mana. Like without those counterplay cards, those tech cards to eat up the graveyard, the deck is just unchained. Like it's so good. It's just so good. Gio's deck is definitely more standard, but at the same time, like things that you don't really see in one, like Forest and Scatter. So many counter spells. Less make disappears. See, like most people like playing like four make disappears. It's fantastic. I mean, this deck is great. Sideboard is totally fine. Really interesting too. Like second Otawara, very smart, very smart. Witness protection is interesting. I don't really know what it's used for, but totally fine. It gives you some interaction. He also has 3 Invoke the Winds, so they both realized that Invoke the Winds was going to be good. Incredible. Scattered Thoughts is pretty cool. It puts stuff in the graveyard. Genius. Stowaway is just a solid card. Pithing Needle is good, obviously, for the hearses or whatever else you thought you would need it for. Bankbuster's solid, just a classic. Just a classic. Let's go back to the Izzet deck, though, because that deck is just... wow. I love it. I love it so much. Like, look at the mana base for Izzet is actually so good. One of the reasons this works is because of Siobhan Reef. I didn't even realize that, like, the weaknesses of splashing a color in your quote-unquote mono blue deck is that you lower your blue sources theoretically, right? I mean, you are going to lower your blue sources a little bit, but the fact that Siobhan Reef exists, it makes so much sense. You have like the extra 4 dual lands that are untapped. It's so good because you need them untapped, right? Because you want to play on curve or have answers up on curve. Every card in this deck has done so much work. It's crazy. The games are so close, but or not. No, some of them are close. Some of them are not close. I think Julian 2-0'd every Esper opponent yesterday. 2-0. No contest. Like they could not do anything against this because you have really good removal to back up your counters. So like Julian was playing so aggressive against the Esper decks. He was like slamming 3-drops. Sometimes I was like, whoa, he's slamming 3-drop. It doesn't matter because he just has removal the next turn if they play a threat. Like he's ready for things to come down, or he has Invoke to take them. Like he's playing super well, and he's drawing well. Like everything is working out for him. He's in such a solid position. I'm really rooting for him to go all the way. But Explorer is a different beast. I don't know much about Explorer, but I'm happy that Standard ended up being actually exciting and interesting. It's a treat for sure. Like look at the sideboard too. Like really interesting. Like 2 more Braids, super smart because obviously Hearse is a problem. The Spell Pierce is great. The third Fading Hope is fantastic. Stroke is good. Second Leer was crazy good. Like he every time you drew a Leer, it was like the win. He just won. And 2 Tolarian Tears for like when you need to quickly dish out like a cheap creature in the mid game against like more creature based decks. So this is definitely not coming in very often because Esper, it's not that important against Esper, but Cemetery Illuminator really did a lot of work yesterday. Elder Dragon War was fantastic as well. This card is so good. Very difficult to cast, but if you cast it, my goodness, this card does so much. There was one game against the Grixis deck that he just won on the spot by playing this on turn 4. He curved out like an Illuminator into this, and his opponent was not expecting it and played like the 2-drop into Fable, and then they swept the 2/2s away, and he was in such a commanding position from that point on. It was kind of crazy. Also, Burn Down's fantastic as a catch-up, or just the hasters. The flexibility in this deck, wild. So good. So much card selection. But Fable is just such a broken card. It can win by itself. It's so crazy. This card adding to the power level, the overall power level of this deck by a lot. So good. Also, you can get your more of your red sources from the Goblin potentially. Like sometimes you're gonna have like one red, you need a second one. Bam, just attack with the Goblin potentially. You get your other red, right? Beautiful. Anyways, that's kind of all I wanted to say today. Just the pure excitement of seeing these, specifically these two crazy Haughty Djinn decks, and then Grixis winning is whatever, but it's better than Esper winning, obviously.